I am Pat Lentz, and I am Santa Claus.
Hello, I'm Michael Gabbard, and I'm Santa Claus.
My name is Santa, and this is my Mrs.Claus.
I was asked by the mother of a friend of my sister to be Santa for her Avon people, her associates. She was like a regional director, and she did a Christmas party every year. And she asked me to do it because I had a beard and that, and her husband and nobody else in the family wanted to do it, so I volunteered to do it. And it was shortly after that, my wife and I were in a little sandwich shop called the Sandwich Block, and it was kind of off hours. There wasn't a whole lot of people there, and the girl behind the counter, the woman behind the counter, had her grandchild with her, and she was taking our order, and I kept seeing this little girl tugging on her grandma's apron, just kept tugging and tugging. And finally Grandma looked down at her and said, "What do you want? I'm trying to help somebody." "Is that Santa Claus?" And when that happened, it was just a moment for me that just struck home that I could bring a smile to a young child's face. And it was right after that I started researching it and trying to find things. And I found a school up in Michigan, which is the oldest Santa school in the country, called the Charles Howard School. And I went there, learned what I needed to learn, and that was the beginning of it. One little child asking her grandma if I was Santa.
In 2012, I was sitting home one day and I had a full beard and thought to myself, I bet I could do a Santa and be able, if I was able to get my beard white through some treatments, I could put some smiles on some people's faces that could probably really use it. And so found a Santa suit and put that on. I took a picture, I sent it to a friend of mine who does Photoshop really well, and I asked if he could make my beard white and see what that would look like out of curiosity. And he sent it back, and I was amazed myself. And so I published it on Facebook and just said, contact for rates and availability, and it took off from there.
My missus was a Mrs. Claus for about 4 years, and I was her photographer. And I kept saying, I did not want to become Santa. Didn't want to grow the beard, I didn't want to bleach my hair, I didn't want to do any of the stuff that Santas had to do, appearance-wise. And I promised my wife that we were going to go to Branson, Missouri for the Kringle family reunion, which is a huge reunion that's put on that had about 800 Santas at for her 50th birthday. And about 3 weeks beforehand, all of a sudden, God got hold of me and said, I want you to do this. I want you to be able to talk to children about how Santa prays to the one and only, how the world has totally taken Christmas away from the birth of Jesus. And I went to her and I said, hey, can I get a Santa Claus costume made? 3 weeks before Branson. And we got it done.
For me, I think I was born to be Mrs. Claus. My mother embraced the Christmas season like no one I had ever known. She had grown up in the Depression, and as a child, often didn't have much except at the holiday time. And so even in my growing up years, she just always found ways, even when we didn't have much, to make the holidays special. And part of our celebration was a JCPenney Santa suit that my brother would don each year. But my brother had some addiction issues and wouldn't always be present. And so my mother would parade me upstairs to the bedroom and strap things down and pad things out. And down the stairs I would go to be Santa for my nieces and nephews. And in years following those experiences, I would put on the red suit and the beard and be Santa from time to time for other children, daycare center, things like that. But part of her other important mission for me was to be Secret Santa. She was the custodian at a local elementary school. And she knew the families that kind of fell in between the gap there. The children who weren't poor enough to qualify for family service funding, or who weren't wealthy enough to afford Christmas on their own. So she would make it her mission to pick out several of those families each year. And she would make sure that every child in the family had a coat and a pair of gloves and a hat and boots and one little special toy for each child and a complete Christmas dinner. And about the Saturday after Thanksgiving, I would get a phone call and my mom would say, "Okay, are you ready?" And I would go over and she'd open her garage door and there would be these piles of gifts and food laid out for the families in her school that she knew were in need. And it became my job to go to deliver them. And so as an adult, when I first saw Mrs. Claus coming into the Christmas community as an active role and player, I had made the decision that I wanted to bring that same kind of joy to families that my mom had brought, despite the fact that she didn't have a well-known place in the community. She was well-loved by people. She wasn't a powerful or important person, but she made a difference. She made kids feel loved. And I think at the bottom of all of what we do, our main goal is to make children know that they are loved, that they are noticed, that they are recognized in this world.
It means a lot to me. When you start hearing the stories that some of these children tell, and they do not hold back when it comes to Santa. They tell me things that I'm sure they don't tell anybody else. And I'm fortunate enough to work at the museum center 3 days a week, where if it's not busy, I'm allowed to go out and just walk around and talk to the kids. And I've gotten on the floor with them before and played with them. And I think because of that, the comfort zone, they tend to say things. And the whole idea of them sharing things. I had a little girl 2 years ago in Terrace Park at their tree lighting tell me, in her own words, she said, "You know, I have just about everything that I want and I really don't need any toys or anything. So I would really like it if you could just give whatever toys you would give to me to someone who's needy. And then for me, if you could just somehow bring peace around the world, that would be great." And this little girl must have been maybe 10 or 11. I saw her later in her home. I do home visits in Terrace Park too, and I saw her in her home later the next week, and I recognized her right away, because you don't forget faces when somebody tells you something like that. And I saw her again, and I just looked at her, I said, "I know what you want." And she just smiled and looked at me and shook her head and gave me the biggest hug. But it's things like that that just keep me going. Even towards the end of the season, when you're really tired, you've been going nonstop 7 days a week for 25, 30 days. It just, when you see the smile on somebody's face and you know that you're making their day, it's just fabulous.
For me, being Santa means delivering Christmas smiles. And that's what I tell people, that I look forward to coming to their homes or to their parties to deliver Christmas smiles. The world is full of hate and hurt and pain. And Christmas is a time that people tend to reflect back on childhoods a lot of times. And Santa's a part of our childhood. And so for me, it's a time that I get the opportunity to go and maybe put a smile on someone's face, or a child, adult, because Santa crosses all boundaries. And to be able to put that smile on their face, if only for a few moments, means everything to me. I feel like I get more joy out of what I do than I'm able to deliver. And I know that I deliver a lot of joy.
You know, for me, it was really pretty incredible, because we're at the Santa gathering, and we're talking to Santas from all around the country, and I'm talking
all around the world.
Yeah, all around the world. But I'm talking the Santas you see in commercials, You know, the Santas that are in the movies, the Santas that are at Rockefeller Center, the Macy's Day Parade, you know, those type of people. And they were so welcoming. And I was just amazed at how, unlike the real world, where everybody's trying to make you look bad, they were doing everything to make me look good. So the first time I put on my suit, we're in Branson, Missouri in July. It's 110 degrees outside with 130% humidity. And we're gonna walk in a parade outside downtown Branson. And I'm walking down and I saw a young lady who was in a wheelchair. And my background is in special education. And she was over underneath the ropes, and I popped down underneath the ropes and I knelt down in front of her, and I just smiled at her, put my hand on her, and she reached out and she touched my beard. And Dad just gasped because she never wanted to touch anybody.
Nor does she want to be touched.
Nor does she want to be touched. And she just lit up. And I knew right then and there that I had found it, because I was going to be able to reach the children or young adults that other people couldn't. That you know, didn't know how to approach those individuals. And so for me, anytime that I see a special needs child, my heart even warms more. But I have to admit that moment I felt accepted into the Santa community because I knew that I had my role.
I think for me, it's an ongoing process. I've had amazing opportunities this year. I recently filmed an episode for Food Network, and last night at Kings Island with the dancers and the singers and Snoopy and everyone, there was just this overwhelming sense of we've made it in a way that I never anticipated. I thought that I would be the storybook reading at preschool, Mrs.Claus, or you know, libraries and things like that. I actually do bake, and so I thought I would do cookie parties and small things like that with children. But as it turns out, I really believe it was a God-ordained thing, that we had a different path that we were put on, and the platform we've been given is a lot bigger than we ever anticipated. And just as far as the making it thing, we've been able to connect with an organization called Wagons Ho Ho Ho. It's a local Ohio-based charity that believes that every child deserves a Christmas. And the way they do that is providing a brand new wagon, which is universal. Either boys or girls will get equal enjoyment out of the wagon, and they fill it with a Christmas meal. And for me, my mother's heart shows through that program. And so of all the Mrs.Claus things that I do that you might look at and say, well, you know, okay, you've made it. Being connected with that program probably gives me the deepest sense of joy and fulfillment, but also the realization that this is what I was called to do, this to serve these children.
Over the 7 or 8 years that I've been doing this, I have a lot, but I'll share two with you today if I can. The first one involves when my very first home visit, in all honesty. And I had done some research and I'd seen what different people do on home visits, and I came up with my own book, Santa's List. And what I do with this is I get from the parents a picture of the child, and then I find out what they want for Christmas that mom and dad's probably going to buy from them or buy for them. And then I have a list of the things that mom and dad are proud of, that they've really done nice, and also something that mom and dad want them to improve on. This was the first time I had used this book, and one of the things that Corinne had done that mom and dad didn't like was that she had put stickers all over the kitchen cabinets. And when mom asked her to help her clean them off, she refused. So we went down the list, talked about what she wanted, made sure that my list was complete, talked about all the good things, and then I just told Corinne, I said, you know, you're on a nice list this year, but I see that you told your mom that you wouldn't help clean the cabinets after you were the one to put all the stickers on them. I said, things like that are the things that get you on the naughty list. And we just kind of left it at that. The next day, Grandpa, who hired me, called me and he said, Pat, you weren't out the house 5 minutes when Corinne was in the kitchen cleaning the cabinets off. So just to know that I have that kind of effect on children, that I can somehow help mom and dad get them to do what they want, that just meant so much. And this book now goes with me on every single home visit I do. And it's always fun when I do families over the years to go back on what they've done in years previous. Corinne now does not believe in Santa, but I still tease her about those stickers and she still laughs about it. So I know that she learned her lesson. The other one that I had kind of involved both the Christmas season and the summertime. I do a family, I've been doing them for several years, and their name is Jack and Addie. I do it for Grandma, and my wife and I were going to an event at Big Bone Park over in Kentucky. And when I got there, I looked at one of the tables and there's Jack and Addie with Mom and Grandma. I looked at my wife and I said, what am I going to do? They got to recognize me. I've been to their house 3 years in a row now. Surely they're going to recognize me. So I decided I'm going to be proactive. And I walked up to the table. I said, Jack, Addie, I can't believe it. You're here too. I love doing things in nature. And we don't have any trees and that at the North Pole, so it's always fun to come down here in a park like this. And we chatted, and they were by my side the rest of the day. They were doing a presentation there on some new exhibits that they had at the park, and they had a gift shop. And at some point in time, Jack and Addie had gone into the gift shop and they saw these long stuffed snakes that they wanted. Mom wouldn't give it to them because for whatever reason, and Grandma wouldn't give it to them because Mom said no. So after they left, I snuck in. This is in like June or July. I snuck into the gift shop and I bought those snakes for them. I had them describe what they were looking at, and I bought them. I kept them until I went back to their house on Christmas, and after we talked and went through the book, I got out my bag and I talked to them about, remember when I saw you in the summer down at Big Bone? And then we started chatting about it and how much fun it was. And then I said, well, you guys saw something there. And I told the elves about it. And guess what they did? And then I pulled out both these snakes and gave it to Jack and Addie. And their eyes got so big. Grandma told me later in the year, the next year actually, that Jack had actually been sleeping with it every single night for months on end. So to know that, again, that you can have an impact on children is just phenomenal.
Oh, virtually every visit I do tends to turn into a memorable moment. I had a moment one time where a grandmother, her son was going through a divorce. He had 3 young children, 3 young girls, and they were afraid that in the midst of this separation of their parents, that Santa wouldn't know where they were, which house that they were, what location. So the grandma hired me to come and just be outside on the sidewalk of the house of their son's home, and just like I was taking notes. And when I got there, then the grandma called and told them to look out the window. And so here's 3 little girls yelling out the window, Santa. And so I recall walking away with tears, because again, I was able to let those kids know that, Santa knows where you're at, and don't worry. So it's moments like that. It's moments of a 60-year-old lady sitting on my lap at a company party, and when she got up, said that was the first time that she'd ever sat on Santa's lap, because it always had freaked her out. As a matter of fact, she said, I went as far as that I didn't take my kids. I made my husband take my kids to the mall to get their pictures with Santa because I didn't even want to be close. And that night, she felt comfortable, and I was able to be her first Santa. Walking into the Kentucky State Patrol having their Christmas party, and it literally was like walking into a kindergarten room. They all became childlike. They were all 5-year-old again. The music stopped, the lights came up, they brought a chair out on the floor, and they all wanted to sit on my lap and get their picture with Santa, just like they were 5 or 6 again. And it's just story after story like that I could go on and on. That it just, like I said, it tends that I end up getting more joy out of delivering Christmas smiles than I could ever give.
For me, there's so many moments in the chair. Just last night, I had a young girl who wanted to wait until her siblings walked away because she had a secret. And her wish was that Mom and Dad would get back together again because they were divorced. And Santa, I told her, I said, Santa doesn't have that magic. I said, but what Santa will do is pray for you. And it comes down to listening. So many people, the only reason that they want to hear someone talk is so that they can respond. And I think that through the chair and through this, I'm able to listen, and people know that I'm really listening. I'm not here to solve their issues. I'm here to listen to them and just give them that moment of comfort.
Hope.
And hope, yeah. Back in Branson, I'm riding up an elevator, and there's a mother there, and she just looked exhausted. And I asked her, I said, are you okay? And, a lot of times, a stranger in an elevator, they're not going to say anything. But when Santa asks, are you okay? She said, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and he was in remission, but it's come back, and we're on our final vacation. And she goes, and today was a really rough day because he had some physical issues, and he had to come in early. So we got off the elevator, and I just asked her, I said, well, is it okay if I pray with you? And we had a really good moment, but it was because of this that people will open up, that people will accept a stranger walking up to them without thinking, oh, this is a weird guy. And it's given me an opportunity to talk to people's hearts.
For me, some of the most memorable moments are small moments. There was a young man standing in line last night who could have cared less about seeing Santa. He had only come to see Mrs. Claus, and he was so excited to be there and to decorate his cookie. And there are heartwarming moments of similar stories of women who've recovered from breast cancer who have sent letters to Santa saying, you have become such an important part of our life. Our family visits you every year. It was on the day that we visited you that I was diagnosed. It was on the day that I visited you that I was told I was in remission. And those are really great stories. For me, the story that has the most impact is when Santa said yes. I had tried not to push, and I was working with other Santas that I really enjoyed working with. But we have such a unique relationship that I couldn't imagine not sharing this experience with him. And so I think I kind of always knew that, as Tim Allen says in the movie The Santa Claus, you don't choose Santa, Santa chooses you. That Tim had been chosen for this. But the day he said yes and the day he agreed to be my partner in this venture is probably my favorite personal story. We've already had, in just his second season, amazing opportunities put in front of us. We've seen things and heard things and been a part of things that have touched and impact our lives in ways that change us. You always hear about what Santa or Mrs. Claus does for the person that they're visiting, but what most people don't think about is how our role of Santa changes us, how it makes us value the things that are important a little bit more, and let go of the things that aren't so important. And it's not an industry that comes without sacrifice of your time, of your emotion, of your financial resources. But it's been an amazing adventure, and I'm so glad that he is a part of it with me.